By the way, China, which you mentioned before, China is the only country in world history that's had recurring periods of greatness. Great Britain was great once, Rome was great once, Egypt was great once. But China's been great 3 or 4 times. They've been the absolute top 3 or 4 times in history. They've also collapsed. Total catastrophe 3 or 4 times in history. But they're the only country in history that somehow, after decades or centuries, has turned around and risen to the top again. And it seems to be happening again. I don't know if they'll be on top in the 24th century, but I'm trying to prepare my children for the 21st century.
Certainly. Well, the political party in China is not shy about that either. They're putting out, they're publishing statements that's very clear of saying exactly that, you know what? We've been the dominant empire for centuries. This last century was a lull. This was tongue in cheek. It was a gap year. But we're coming back, and they're very clear about their intentions. They intend to be the dominant empire. They're not hiding that. And when I look at, you mentioned some of the other empires, the Dutch Empire, the British, the U.S., and perhaps we're going to see a Chinese empire. Not to down talk them, but there is an element of hubris involved in being a dominant empire and having, in the term that we think of now as this American exceptionalism and this sort of divine, there's a bunch of terms that kind of go along with this concept of that America is destined to be great. And that's defined a lot of the identity of Americans and the nation for so long. Do you see some of that in China in the way that they speak about their past and also where they want to be in the future?
Well, it's interesting. I do not, and maybe it's translations, I do not hear the Chinese talking about empire. It's been rare in history that the Chinese have had an empire. In the West, we've had empires, the Romans, many people, the British. But I do not remember the Chinese talking in the terms of empire. They do talk in terms of being successful, on top. They've certainly said that. And I mean, everybody, if you go to the U.S., every state in the U.S. has a governor who insists that my state is going to be the best. We're going to be on top.
Some states stand out more than others.
Yeah, well, and they send delegations to other countries and say, come and trade with us and invest here because we're going to be the dominant state. So everybody, and many countries want success and try to attract investment and expertise to their country. The Chinese, Deng Xiaoping was the guy who in the late 70s said, hey, we got to try something new. This is not working. Mao Zedong had even put him in jail at one point, even though he was an ally of Mao Zedong. He said, when you open the window, you're going to get flies, but you get sunshine and fresh air. So let's open the window. So that it doesn't matter to me if it's a black cat or a white cat, as long as it catches mice. The guy was a genius and extremely brave because very few people in history have taken what many people would consider huge risks that he took. And he said, okay, we're going to change completely. Mao Zedong is dead, and we're going to open the country to the outside world, and we're going to develop our economy, our society, etc. And he did so. Well, you know the rest of the story. China became the most successful country in the world for a while there. Still is extremely successful. Doesn't mean there won't be problems. America was the most successful country in the 20th century, but my goodness, we had problems along the way. Civil War, depressions, riots in the streets. You could buy and sell congressmen. Well, you could still buy and sell congressmen, but in those days they were cheap. Everybody was buying and selling a few congrrismen.
And people.
It was a mess. And people, and people too. There was slavery, in fact, but even after slavery was when it became more common to buy and sell congressmen. And America, despite all those problems, became extremely successful. China is having problems. It will have more problems as they develop. We go through periods in history when countries close off. Deng Xiaoping insisted that everybody open up, and his successors were the same. They were very, very aware of the rest of the world. You know, there was a guy named Jack Ma who was an English teacher, Chinese English teacher. He went off to California to practice English, and he learned about the internet. And he came back and built one of the most successful companies in the world called Alibaba. That's all because he happened to be sitting around in California while all these crazy people were doing crazy things. And he learned from them. And China has exploded because of the opening to the outside world. They may be closing off again, and that usually leads to problems in history. But to repeat, every country that has grown has had periods of decline and problems, such as the United States. China is going to have bankruptcies now, which is going to surprise a lot of people. It's going to surprise me, and I just told you it's coming. The Chinese, at least, China knows they need to let people go bankrupt. In America, we don't let people go bankrupt anymore. We're too strong for that. We're too powerful. You know, no. Nobody can fail. That's not the way the system is supposed to work or ever has. The Chinese seem to know that, and they seem to be developing. There will be problems. They have problems now. But I don't think you're going to see the Chinese go to war. Well, that's a difficult statement because there has always been war, and there probably always will be war in the future. But the Chinese, throughout their history, do not have many international wars. If you look at the West, history is full of international wars. The Chinese have slaughtered each other at times in history, but you don't see the Chinese riding off to invade Brazil or many other countries throughout their history. So it certainly can happen, and it probably will happen, because history also shows that when you have a dominant power which is stagnant or in decline, there's often a rising power, and those powers often clash. They don't have to, and they don't always.